Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the gun guy. Today I've got a Beretta 92FS for you, which is a great gun, but I'm going to compare it against the kinds of guns that came before this particular design and explain to you why I don't particularly like this gun design. Now, before you start throwing hate mail at me, as far as the 92FS is concerned, I've shot a lot of them, and I've discovered they're really a great gun. There's a whole bunch of veterans that love to buy them when they get out of the service, and there's a reason for that. They've carried them in combat zones and throughout the time of their service to their country, and they've discovered that they're a very reliable, very solid gun. Now, the truth is about them, when they first were adopted by the military, they did have some problems after they got very high round counts. There were some internal parts that tended to fail and needed to be replaced, but I'm not a veteran, but my understanding just from doing some research is that Beretta took care of that a long time ago, and they no longer have those type of failure problems with this particular pistol. Now, the other thing I will say too is I've shot these particular pistols a lot, and this one I took to the range, shot quite a bit, and it is a great gun. They're very comfortable to shoot. They're very ergonomic. They're very accurate for a combat pistol. I find them to be extraordinarily so, and I actually do enjoy shooting them. And because they're heavy and they're all steel, and in the case of the 92FS, they're chambered in 9mm. They're very light recoil, fairly accurate. It's got really nice sights and shoots extremely well. My issue with the guns is a personal one on a couple of bases. How do you say that? On a couple of reasons. I know I can get that out if I keep trying. And they all come from the fact that the gun is sort of a mid-tier technology. It's a medium technology. It's a step from one thing to the next. Let me explain what I mean. So I'm going to set this one down, and I'll grab a 1911. Now, this is a Colt Combat Commander, but any 1911 would do. In the days when people carried 1911s a lot, or these types of pistols a lot, the issues that came up were, one, the gun had to be carried one of two ways. It could either be carried with a loaded magazine and an empty chamber, and the hammer resting on the firing pin with an empty chamber, and that meant you had to draw the gun, rack the slide to feed the first round, and now you were ready to go. Well, that was one way of carrying the gun, but that took a little extra time. You had to draw the gun, then you had to rack the slide. The other problem with it is it took two hands to do that. The gun couldn't easily be put into action one-handed. Now, you might say, well, that's no big deal. I mean, I could do that. Sure, the problem is that this other hand, the support hand, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, is often busy. In the case of law enforcement, you might have a microphone for your radio, or in the old days, the whole stinking brick of a radio that you had could have a flashlight, might have a ticket book, could have in my case, might have a cup of coffee and a donut. I don't know. You know, those are precious items. You don't want to drop those to shoot, right? No, I'm kidding, of course, but I mean, these hands are often busy. For civilians, if my wife or children are with me, I'm scooping them behind me to get them behind me before I'm dealing with whatever it is. So I may be drawing the gun as I'm moving a loved one or somebody that's important to me out of the way, which means the gun has to be brought into action one-handed. And if you have to rack the slide in order to do that, you can't do it one-handed because you got to have two hands, one to hold the gun, one to rack the slide. Now, you can argue, yes, can the slide be racked one-handed? Yes, but those training drills are for emergency purposes, where you're pushing the gun off your belt or your holster or an object, or learning to do, as my father trained me to do, to be able to take the gun and rack it one-handed like that. It takes a lot of hand strength and a lot of practice. It can be done, but it certainly isn't quick. And it's for emergencies, when you've shot your gun dry and you're injured, and now you only have one hand and you got to get the gun back into action. It certainly isn't for drawing the gun initially and saving your life when time is of the essence and milliseconds count. So the problem there was solved by carrying the gun with a loaded magazine, a round in the chamber, the hammer cocked, and the safety on safe, and this is called condition one. And people began to carry 1911s and these types of guns, single action only guns, in this fashion, with a round in the chamber, loaded magazine, and the safety on. Now, along came people who worried about whether this was unsafe. Now, just so you know, I carried this particular gun in this particular way for many years. In one case, I was chasing a guy through a parking lot, and didn't realize it. My holster snap was unsnapped, and the gun fell out onto the concrete, and it did not go bang. And that's just me, but this has happened a lot to a lot of people. This is a very safe way to carry this gun. Nevertheless, people saw it, didn't like it, thought, wow, that's terribly unsafe, and so a solution had to come to play. Now, if I carried it this way, I certainly could get it at the gun. I could get it into action one-handed. It was a safe way to carry, but the idea of carrying a cocked pistol on a loaded round was not safe in the eyes of attorneys and those people who worry about such things. And so along came a different design to try to solve these problems. Now let me put this gun down. I'll tell you what, let's just leave the slide locked and put it back down there, way. And we'll get this one. So what came along was the idea of a double single gun. That is a gun that would fire the first round double action. You press the trigger and the hammer comes all the way back and falls. Again, double action means the trigger does basically two things. It cocks the hammer and then lets it fall. And the subsequent rounds would be fired single action. It means the trigger only does one thing. It lets the hammer fall because each time the gun is fired, the slide cocks the hammer, and so it's already cocked. And so with these guns, you loaded the magazine into the gun, and then you let the slide fall forward, and then you used a sweeping motion of this device called a safety decocker, and as you swept it down, it would let the hammer fall safely on the round without firing it. And now, if I press the trigger, well, I gotta take it off safe, that's one of the issues. If I press the trigger, the hammer is cocked until it falls, the gun goes bang, and when the gun goes bang, the slide comes back, cocks the hammer, and every subsequent trigger press is single action. That was considered to be much safer because the gun was carried with the hammer not cocked, but resting in a resting position, not cocked with the slide forward and the chamber loaded, and the safety was on. So that was just thought to be safer. All right, well, I got two issues with that, and this is where I don't particularly like these style of guns. The first issue I have with them, and this is personal preference. You may love them and you can make them work and so on, but I can't. I just never been able to. I don't like a gun that I have to press the trigger with two different trigger presses in a gunfight. It's single action, double action the first time and single action after that, which means my first round goes where it needs to go and the second one goes I don't know where, or the first one goes I don't know where and the second one goes where it needs to go because I'm used to one trigger press or the other, but it's very difficult for me in the middle of a gunfight to master both trigger presses, one right after another. So I don't prefer these guns for that reason. Here's the other reason. Once I've fired my rounds and I'm done, and the hammer, take it off safe, the hammer is cocked. The slide is back because my magazine is empty and I want to reload the gun. Well, you may know that many people, if you see them at the range, are trained to load their magazine, put their palm here, their fingers here, pull back on the slide and rack it, and pull back all the way and let the slide go. Well, you'll notice what happened is, in the process of doing that, I just decocked the ground and put the gun on safe, which means now I'm trying to get back in action. I press the trigger and I got a dead trigger because I just put my gun on safe. Well, the reason why that happened is because as my hand slid by the slide, it put the safety in place and decocked the hammer. Well, so now you got to retrain yourself. You've been shooting other guns and you were taught to do that. Palm here, fingers here, and rack. Now you got to figure out a different way to do it. So if you're shooting this gun, you want to use two hands maybe to reload it. That's when you're going to learn to slingshot it. So rather than doing it this way, you're going to slingshot it. You're going to grab it with two fingers and pull back and let it go. Now that won't put the gun unsafe and it won't drop the hammer. But it's less positive. You have less of a grip on the slide. So if it's a rainy day or your hands are sweaty or whatever, you might not be able to do that quite as effectively. The other option is you can reach over and hit the slide stop and let that go, hit it with your thumb. Well, that's a tiny little object, which is one of the reasons why we train people to use two hands to reload the gun and pull it back this way or slingshot it, because that's even more positive than just hitting the slide stop, which is really easy to do on the range and can be done when you're in the middle of a gunfight, but it's less, well, let's say the percentages of success are less. Let's put it that way, just because it's a small object and it's easy to miss. Now, if you're one-handed and your other hand's busy, yeah, hit the slide stop. But I don't particularly like these guns for those two reasons. And this is not the only one built this way that has the safety, that I automatically get the safety when I rack the slide like I just did. Many of them are that way. This just happens to be one. Now, as far as the gun's manufacturer is concerned and the quality of the gun, and is it a great gun and does it shoot well? Yes, there's nothing wrong with a Beretta 92 FS that I've ever experienced. And I've shot a lot of them. I've been, a member of the P2K Range for 30 years. I've watched students rent them, these rental guns with incredibly high round counts, and they just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. So are they reliable? Absolutely. Are they well built? Absolutely. Can you bet your life on them? You bet. You bet. But from a functional perspective, I just wanted to share with you the two reasons I don't particularly like them. I don't like the double action and then single action trigger press. I understand the safety concerns and the reason why it's there, but I'd rather have a gun that's either double action all the time or single action all the time, not changing triggers in the middle. And I don't like the decocker safety design on these pistols, because the way I was trained to rack the slide when I'm reloading the gun in a hurry, I invariably, every stinking time, will put the gun on safe, and then I press the trigger and there's nothing there. So just know that if you buy a gun like this, you're going to have to get used to a trigger press that changes, and you're going to have to learn to either slingshot it, which is reach down here like this and pull it straight back with your fingers, slingshot it. I don't want to point it at the camera, obviously. The cameraman is there. Or you're going to have to really get in the habit of just hitting that slide stop, or both. And you might want to get a little larger slide stop to make sure that it's something that you can actually connect with if there's an emergency and your hands are sweaty, or you're just in a big hurry, or you're scared, or whatever. All of those things happen when somebody's trying to hurt you. But anyway, now you understand why these things came about and how the development ended up being more popular with law enforcement and so on. It's because they were considered safer than carrying the gun cocked all the time, and it got away from the necessity to carry the gun with nothing in the chamber and having to rack it when you got the gun out. So there you are. Now, you may know some more history I don't, and you may thoroughly disagree with me, and if you do, that's okay. Go ahead and comment in the comment section. Please leave the swear words out. The filter does filter those out, and then your comment doesn't show up. So if you do it without swear words, that would be better. So there it is, the Beretta 92FS. It's a terrific pistol, and it is loved by a great many people. A lot of veterans, as they say, love them. I've met many a police officer that loves them. And they are a very reliable, very solid gun. I've just explained to you why I don't particularly like them. They're not my favorite. And it's more a functionality and training issue than it is anything else. I'm accustomed to other kinds of guns, and so it's like anything else. What you've imprinted on is what you might want to stick with. But otherwise, terrific gun. So if you've got one, share in the comment section about your experiences with them. Anyway, thank you very much for watching my channel. Please like, subscribe. There's a tab up there, a little button right there for you to do that. That way we can remind you when new videos come out. And don't forget to check the old ones. We do have new ones come out once or twice, sometimes 3 times a week. Also, I put some links over here so that you can check out the Twitter, Facebook page, and also you can check out the blog if you like. That's what the little TV with the G is. That's our logo for the blog. If you click that, it'll take you to the blog. And if you're on a mobile device and none of this stuff works, that's okay. Those links are also in the description, so you can find the links down there. Now, if you're not a member of the National Rifle Association and you like gun videos and you enjoy shooting and enjoy stuff about firearms, you need to be. So I'm going to put a link right here so that you can join the NRA. It'll save you a little bit of money, and you can join the NRA for a year for less than the cost of 1 box of ammunition. In case you haven't noticed, our firearms rights are under attack constantly, and the NRA needs your membership and needs your help. Now, if that tab doesn't work, that little link, you don't see it, and you're on a mobile device, that's fine. The link is in the description as well, so you can use it down there. Also, if you happen to have a gun and you use it for maybe home defense, or you carry a gun like I do every day, if you ever have to use it, God forbid, you could likely get sued or arrested or whatever. The government is going to come after you anyway, even if you did nothing wrong, and you're going to want to have some backup. The company I use for that is called Second Call Defense, and I've got a link right here and in the description so that you can check them out as well. The reason I like them over some of the other services is that it's not insurance. My insurance will help defend me, but only after I've succeeded in defending myself, which means I got to shell out all the money, a couple $100,000 or whatever, for lawsuits and criminal defense, and then if I succeed and I'm successful in defending myself, they'll reimburse me. Well, that doesn't help. I got to sell my house and sell all my stuff to come up with the money in the first place. Second Call Defense doesn't do that. They front the money for your legal defense. They front the money to bail you out of jail. And if you, God forbid, you have to shoot somebody to defend yourself in your house, you get a burglar or home invasion or something, they'll even send you a little money to clean up the mess. So they're a very good service. That's why I use them, and that's why I've got this link here and why I recommend them. Check them out. Thank you again for watching my channel. I really do appreciate it. We're growing like a weed, and it's all because of you. I hope you'll continue to like and share, and please, if you haven't already, subscribe. Have a great week, and be safe.